Hello, everyone. All right, here we are. Today is Saturday, the 3rd of May. I went for a long walk today. It's a lovely day, not too hot, not too cold. And I must say that I am in a rather meditative mood. And although I have something else ready, I think I'm going to talk about what is on my mind at the moment. Because of listening to the news and stuff, and I was just thinking about the state of the world, and it feels as if the modern world is sinking. It seems as if the branches have been cut off from the tree, from the roots of the tree, and there is nothing sustaining it. But some of us still remember. And so my question, are we in decline? As I was walking along, I think we have been in decline for some time now. I think the health of our society, the spiritual health, and we lost that a long time ago. But there are reasons for hope, despite this disease that's afflicting us nowadays. Why do I say that it is in decline, or that it is ill or sick, or there is a disease? Well, there are many, many reasons. I was listening to something and then I realized, yes, reproduction of our species, the fact that we are not even having children enough to if we used to have what, for every couple 2.5 or 3 or whatever, we have to regenerate the population. So at the moment, in some places is 1, in other places there are places where it is 0.8 or something like that. That is not enough. And this is an issue, even if you don't look at it from a religious viewpoint, just from a survival of the species, of your culture, of your people, of your civilization, is not enough. So a healthy society naturally wants to perpetuate itself, wants to continue on with its children and wants to have its grandparents and its grandchildren there at the big kitchen table, and it's not happening. I think it is one of the clearest indicators of this illness and discomfort, this lack of sufficient regeneration or reproduction. It's not just an economic. It's not just, as I said, the religious factor and economic factor. It's really a vital, symbolic factor in our lives. And this means that if we're not even willing to do that, it means that somehow we are exhausted. Our lives are exhausted. And so we cannot give what we do not have. And so reproduction ends. It's like a slow motion self-destruction. Is this the first time? Has this happened before, that societies went through this? If we look at history, did they go through these periods of decline? Yes, of course. Moments of crisis, my goodness, throughout history, okay? Many, of course. Wars, massacres, invasions, conquests, famine. Everything has happened before. But somehow there was always a regeneration afterwards. Whether your country had been invaded by other violent tribes, or there was a famine, or the Black Death, or the plague, somehow there was in those left the necessary energy, the necessary spirit to want to go on, regenerate, to be reborn, to start anew. What's different today is that it seems that this capacity to strength, to be reborn again, a rebirth, is exhausted. And people don't care anymore. And this is a vital force that somehow has been emptied out of us. The meaning of life for people has been emptied. And it seems that we are waiting, as if we are waiting for something slow, inexorable, towards. We have accepted that we are moving towards a nothingness that seems to be looming on the horizon. And this is something that perhaps we haven't seen before. And that is, and this is, I think, is the different, is one reason. The reason for our crisis is not a catastrophic external event. Mankind has been through those forever, but rather it seems that the catastrophe is internal. What was external has been sort of internalized, and people's lives manifest a sort of a malaise that prevents this rebirth, that takes away this energy. An inner capacity for growth, for economic growth and expansion. And it is as if we are living now at a moment, I mean, compared to other times, I know that there are so many people with difficulties, but nevertheless, you know, the state of the welfare of the nation, that we are better than our ancestors there. We can eat, we don't have to survive every day, try to survive every day. But this, how did it happen that even though, in very general terms, we are richer than we have ever been, that humankind has ever been, we are, in terms of economics, as it were, richer than before. Nevertheless, we have this problem. It seems as if these riches somehow have killed us internally. And there is a connection there in that when life is reasonably easy, we don't need to overcome ourselves. We don't need to overcome danger. We don't need to struggle every day. And so our strength, our inner strength, starts faltering. And we are going back to sort of an embryonic state of life where everything is safe, where life is easy. And so we lose, it seems, this ability to continue challenging ourselves, to continuously testing ourselves. And so it's easy to give up hope in this state, because when you stop challenging yourself, man is dead or is about to die. So we need, of course, we want an easy life, but within that easy life, we also need challenges in order to keep us fit spiritually. Otherwise, we will be creating a weak man. And I think this is what has happened. Weak man, I think Walt Whitman calls him the hollow man. A hollow man without inner life, without the capacity to transmit a life, a symbolic life, without enough strength to face the difficulties that come when they come. Because ultimately, when there is no capacity to overcome, the difficulty drags you down and crushes you. What has happened in the Western world, easy times, weak men, very difficult times we're living through. We do not understand, we seem incapable of understanding what is happening to us, where these malaise came from. And yet it is all over, it is very diffused in society. The example might be a little bit tiresome, but I use it only as an example. When our society embraced, for example, the lockdown, did it embrace it? Actually, at the beginning, yes, it did. And that told us a lot about the state of health in our, I'm talking about inner health, spiritual health, psychological health of our society. A society that embraced lockdown with enthusiasm is a society in bad health internally. But it didn't know it. People didn't know it. And so when everyone was on lockdown and everyone was at home and people were separated from the world of work, they separated from the life that they had been living up to that point, separated from work, separated from leisure, separated from family, cut off basically from everyone, from their daily lives, from their night outings, certainly from their religious practice. When that happened, at the beginning, if you remember, there came a sort of a relief. Do you remember that? A relief in their lives, as if the life that they had been living was an unbearable life, only they didn't know it. Then the stopping came, stop that kind of life, and then they saw it. They saw the life that they had been leading. So at first it was, oh great, it's a little rest, it's a little vacation from this world, this so crazy, fast-paced world, and people loved it. And I remember that when I saw this relief in people, in this confinement, I saw the people in that situation a society that, though it had extolled virtues of freedom, its values of freedom, however, internally, it knew, well, it didn't know, but it knew, it came to know it after. It couldn't, society, people couldn't see it at the moment, but it was able to express consciously now that this life, a relief from that life that they had been leading, it was almost an expression of that life was not worth living. Better to stay at home than to continue with that life. I think people saw that for the first time. They didn't know it, that they were unhappy with that kind of life, that fast-paced life. And we hear a lot about nihilism. And nihilism is something that really, when you scrape quite a bit, you see that what the nihilists believe really deep inside is that life is not worth living. This nihilism, this ghost at the door, is the nihilist is living a life of, is what hollow men live, that kind of life, that nothingness is better than being, and really that there is no reason to stay alive, really, but you must keep on living out of perhaps just a mere instinct of survival, even though the meaning of life for this person is completely over. There have been many philosophers who have spoken about this. And when you talk of philosophers, you normally start with Aristotle, yes. But just practically everyone had to deal with this issue. And Aristotle explained that there are two kinds of life, to put it in very general terms. What he called Zoe, the zoological life of man, the animal life, man as an animal, and what he called the good life. And the good life, he didn't mean possessions, he didn't mean having 3 cars, 2 swimming pools. He meant a life of happiness, of fulfillment, of contentment. It's not only work all the time, although if work gives you that satisfaction, by all means, but it's a life where you have friendships, where you sit out and have a drink with your friends. It's a much fuller life, and that was for the Greeks the good life. And he felt that man needs to put aside that zoological, he called it, that animal life, because that animal life is also a violent life. It has to be violent. And if you want to have the good life, violence cannot be part of it. But today's nihilism says that there is no such thing as the good life. It doesn't exist. Friendships, the inner internal life that is not there, then man has to, if it is not there, then all that man has is that zoological animal life. And this is a violent life, a life that puts before us constantly that the fact that we have to assume violence. One must be violent in order to survive. But this violence in our society, since we cannot express it openly, that violence is therefore internalized. It is directed towards oneself. And so that could very well be the reason for many of the psychological ailments in our society. So we end up in a society with violence against oneself. So, in other words, the pistol is drawn, turns the gun. Postmodern man turns the gun to himself and injures himself. And this self-inflicted harm, of course, goes totally against that good life. It is not possible to live violently and enjoy the good life. It is impossible to live violently and have at the same time a deep inner life, a life of friendships with others, a life fruitful with others. Violence means annihilation. Violence continually requires an enemy to fight. Other malaise that there are three main pillars here. One is culture. The current culture. We all enter into a world that has a given culture. We get socialized into that culture, and that culture permeates our way of life. And it is impossible to think, as some do today, that you can just reject your culture as if it was just a change of clothes. That is not possible. So today, however, culture is very fragmented. It is a culture that is broken. It's broken because the transmission from older times has been broken, has been cut off from the past. It is a culture, what we have right now, because it has been cut off from the roots. It's a culture that therefore needs to regenerate itself continuously. It has to reproduce itself continuously. It is as if we have to be reinventing the wheel over and over and over again. Because we have left aside, we have thrown almost what had been there. The flower, the culture, that flower is no longer attached to the roots of the plant or to the roots of the tree. The roots have been forgotten. They have been left aside. And that is what happens to man. If you have to be, because you have no roots and you're just a branch dancing around, you have to be reinventing yourself continuously. And that has to be exhausting. This experience of fragmentation, of forgetting, of distance from the reality that was in the past, it's an experience that is almost inhuman. It has very little of human in it. a culture of entertainment, also very fast. Everything is fast, requires continuous change, and with a very poor symbolic world as well. That culture does not evoke anything in man, but only it's through stimuli, sensory stimulation. Does not evoke a memory, evoke any spirit, evoke any sense of epic. It's a kind of a low, degraded kind of culture. It is reflected in the music, art, language, in the content of what we consumed. A visual culture is not the same as, say, written culture. And what we see now seems normal now, but it is not. For a person, such fast pace, for a person to be able to absorb something worth absorbing, to understand something has to enter into his heart. It takes time. It takes digestion, as St. Thomas Aquinas said. Understanding things require time, requires silence, reflection. What we read, what we hear nowadays needs to penetrate us and make us question things, question ourselves even. But this so fast, accelerated pace of life prevents us from this time of silence and reflection. Culture is one of these important pillars that have been broken today in our world. The other one is the world of work, another pillar. Again, this has been going on now for over 200 years, but we have become what we do, our jobs in many cases. We need a job to survive, obviously. We go and get a job, obviously. But what we do many times does not resonate with our inner life. You do it because you have to go to work and you have to get paid at the end of the month because you need that job, obviously, to earn your daily bread. But those are, for a lot of people, external actions. In other words, the person is a tool, is an instrument, it's like a cog in a machine. In olden times, it's not that I want to go back there, but just to see how work has changed, because in olden times people did work. They did work. But in pre-industrial world, work was more or less a family job, or you were an artisan. And the skills were passed on from father to son. Work shaped a person's life. Salary or wages was not the main part of the work. Yes, you were paid, or you got paid in some sort of way. But this, what we have now of hours and work, hours, production, salary, that requires that our lives, that we give our lives over for 8 hours or 10 hours to another person or entity in exchange for money, yes, but to another, and that is necessary for us to survive. But in many cases, that job that I do for money doesn't mean anything to me. It is something that I have to do, but it's there on the surface of my life, a daily session of my time. But it has no resonance for me, no spiritual evocation, no kind of memory, no kind of symbolic life. It's simply production. And the point is that man feels this separation from the meaning of the work that he did before. Of course, Karl Marx called it alienation, and on this he was right. It takes its toll, it takes an internal breakdown. A man who works because he needs the job but is not fulfilled, he's not full, he's not happy what he does, really. And we've had now but 2 centuries of that. You remember in the at the beginning of the 20th century, Charles Chaplin, with the machines there, he was just a cog in a machine. And that was 100 years ago. But the economic system in which we live, we can call it, I don't know whether to call it free trade anymore. The capitalist system, let's say, that I think that is accepted. 100 years ago, it was not as old as it is now. And so people at the beginning of the 20th century could still see the change, what had happened. They had been, of course, displaced from the countryside and the old ways into the cities, and they had to get a job, and they had to work for wages. But they could still see, in that collective memory, could see what, much more clearly than we can, what the capitalist production system was. Of course, today we no longer work in these factories. Everything has been shipped to China. But we're still cogs in a machine. Many people are. And we might not know it. And this takes its toll in our lives. That's the other pillar. The third pillar, I think, is religion. Because man, there have been so many changes, and man has been secularized. Modern man, that's, doesn't have very much to do with religion. A lot of people, and people are sometimes they express their pride. Oh, I don't believe in anything. I'm an atheist, and with certain pride. But man is religious. Is a religious creature, whether you like to admit it or not. Of course, you can say, I don't believe in anything. I am an atheist. But you may be aware of it or not, but you continue in your atheism, in the way that you live your life, you continue to reproduce religious factors in your life. The only thing is that you don't notice it, perhaps. That was actually very well explained. One of the authors that dealt with this issue of modern man, I'm going to explain it a little bit further, but is a Romanian author, he was born in 1907 and died in 1986. His name is Mercea Eliade. I'll put his name down, but probably mispronounced it. Okay, but he's a philosopher of religion and many other things. He also wrote very, very interesting short stories and other things. But he went all over the world to study all kinds of religions and all kinds of tribes everywhere. He was interested in these men living the sacred life, a pattern of religion. The gods may be different, everything may be different, but always there is a sense of certainly the transcendent in some sort of way. But never in any circumstance did they repudiate the religious, the sacred. There was always something sacred. This is the first time that we don't find anything sacred, if I have to put it in inverted commas, I will, sacred in life. But this postmodern man, the one that I'm talking about here, the man uprooted with no roots, left to float by himself. This man afflicted by this disease, this psychological living disease. Okay, this man abandons religion. Sometimes it is formal religion in the sense of belonging to a religion or doing religious practices of some kind. But he is nevertheless a man who continues in his daily ordinary life reproducing religious liturgies. And those of us from inside, from a religious perspective, can see it. But he doesn't. He can't see it. Yes, I said religious liturgies. But those religious liturgies may come through different contexts. It could be through football. It could be through elections every 4 years. Those are popular democratic liturgies of voting. It comes through a worshipping of something, and that could be his work, or that could be his money or his bank account, or that could be his body in the gym. This author and so many others explain that man was made to worship, and you are going to worship something. All right. If you don't worship God, obviously you're going to worship something else. You say, oh, but that's not religion, but it is. It's a religion of a different kind. Because you're going to worship the gods of this world. Vanity, greed, money. And that man, emancipated from religion, actually continues to live in a religious way. He just doesn't realize it. That discipline of foods and diets and organic this and whatever. It's this, not it that. Okay, we Catholics will do it in Lent. But those are disciplines that are applied to a man in a religious way. In many cases for the worship of his body, for example. And the experiences of the degraded experiences of a religious life somehow deify earthly gods. And if he doesn't worship God, he will worship something else. Now, let me bring here. Yes, I'm going to read you a little bit from these works of my mystic. Yeah. This one is, I have read this before, but it was a long time ago. So this one is a chapter, very short chapters on, he has something on love of self, the greatest obstacle in a spiritual fulfilled life. And he says, self-love, the major obstacle we shall encounter. In order to understand what this love is and how it operates, it's going to help us to understand ourselves a little bit better. I don't want to preach, and but it is psychologically, I think, very accurate, and it is easy to understand. In order to understand what this love is, love of self, and how it operates, let us try to understand the following well from the very beginning. There are two enemies, two contending forces within us, each pulling in its own direction, each struggling to gain supremacy over the other and reign supreme in our souls. They are the spiritual and the mundane, love of God or love of the world. These are the two contending, the primary ones, the two contending forces within ourselves, in this direction or in that direction. All right? I say they're capital enemies because each struggles to achieve its own aim and objective. They are like two monarchs or two sovereigns, each fighting for the establishment of their own crowns. There cannot be two kings in one kingdom, ruling jointly, or side by side, or taking turns. There can only be one. And for us, this means that there can only be one principal and primary love in our soul. One fountainhead, one source from which and through which everything else we love will be loved. So, first of all, two contending forces, two loves, one towards the spiritual, one towards the mundane, from which one we choose everything else we love. We will love through that, yeah? This struggle is a choice between the spiritual and the ephemeral, between the eternal and the transitory, between God and the world. Okay, then he continues on. And love of self. What about self-love? Being against natural and divine law, what can you expect but for it to be messy and false, thwarted, inconsiderate, and unjustifiable? It is against God, against truth, and against nature. It is the first act of injustice, the first turmoil, injury, and offense to God, the first vice and the first evil, the first slap in God's face. When I take this most sovereign power to myself, I offend His Majesty gravely and do him great injustice. I am, in fact, scorning him, taking away the honor due only to him. I am making myself God in his place. And this is the worst evil I can ever do, because quite unashamedly, I am trying to take away the supremacy that belongs only to God and destroy it. I am not just disregarding God here, I am treating him as second to myself. And consequently, what I am in fact doing is snatching his crown. Let me see. Let me say one more word about love. The nature of love is to convert the lover in the beloved. Whatever external object or creature I love, by the mere act of loving it, I transform myself in it. I become one with it. That is what love is. And so when I love myself over and above everything else, including God, I am making myself the object of my own love. In other words, I am making myself my own foundation, my own source, and my own goal, my own starting point and my own end point, my own departure and my own destination. Outside of God and against God. I follow myself and love myself as an end in itself. And everything else I happen to love, I love it only because I see myself in it. Because it benefits me. I use everything and everybody as a means to satisfy and love myself. How about this for psychology from the 16th century? I am my own Lord and recognize no other. And in all this, what I am really doing is conferring on myself superiority over God. He goes on for a while, but then let me find another, just very quickly. Just two more paragraphs. It says, Saint Chrysostom says that, continuing on this self-love, that denying oneself means seeing oneself as one's own enemy and treating oneself as such. And he gives this example by way of illustration. Suppose you had a friend whom you esteemed and loved greatly, and so pleased were you with his company that not a moment went by that you would be apart from him, or he from you. When eating, he would be at your table, when sleeping at your bedside, always with you, accompanying you everywhere. One could almost say that you were another him and he another you. And suppose that one day you were told, with good reason, to be wary of him, for he was ready not only to betray you and hand you over to your enemies, but also to take your life. You cannot believe it, of course. That's impossible, you say. You're lying to me. But upon further investigation, you find that the account might, after all, be accurate. Astonished and bewildered, you wonder, how can this be? There must be a mistake. He's my friend. But more evidence is brought before you, and you finally have to admit that it is indeed true. And you cry, is it possible that he was betraying me all along? How could I have been so blind as to believe that the one I thought to be my best friend was, in fact, actually my worst enemy? And your like turns to dislike, and your friendship to animosity, your love even to hate. Goes on, and then he says, my dear brother, you who continue to read these words, I say to you only this. Do you not realize that this body of yours you so delight in pampering and indulging? This friend for whom you seek the most succulent dishes, the dearest wines, the finest silks, the most precious jewels of the Orient, and all those artificial joys and vain pleasures. Are you not yet aware that the things of this world you so persist putting upon all your trust upon, with whom you delight in such close company, this master at whose beck and call you serve all day and all night, this lover with whom you so pleasantly cohabit, do you not yet realize that this so-called friend is leading you up the garden path? That under the guise of friendship, what he is doing is simply taking you along the rosiest road only to hand you over to your enemy. Let me see. I shall end on this note. Self-love, as I have said, is the foundation and root of all evil, and in short, you will not free yourself from it unless you are ready to destroy it. You must do this because this self-serving master, once implanted in your soul, is far from sterile. From it, two other different loves are born. You have love of self, love of God. We chose love of self. From this love of self, something is going to beget other loves. From it, two other different loves are born. One pertaining to the mind, representing our worship of status, success, concern for reputation, view of our own standing and excellence, and the other pertaining to the senses, our unquenchable thirst for physical satisfaction of all kinds. Therefore, if, in contempt of God, you put yourself above him, you are going to love yourself in either of these two ways, by means of the mind or by means of the flesh. For it is from these two false gods that all others are begotten. If you worship your excellence and reputation and what others think or say about you, you're going to love everything that leads to flattery, aggrandizement, adulation, applause. And if it is sensual delights you're after, you will unceasingly search for anything that promotes them or contributes to them. And so you are forever caught in a world of increasing them and discarding them and increasing them again. But what is common to both pleasures of body and mind, however, is that we do not love them for themselves. We do not love temporal and external things for what they are, but for the satisfaction we get from them. Thus, the more satisfaction they give us, the closer and the more entrenched they become, established in our heart. And because the king of all these false gods, to whom they all bow and pay heed and obedience, is worldly success, usually represented by the shortcut of money, money tends to be loved above all else. And so we love degrees and titles and appellations and ranks. And we love careers and status and commissions and positions. And we love dioceses and bishoprics and missions and jurisdictions. All this we love. But what we are really loving is ourselves. We use them for our satisfaction and aggrandizement. We use them to worship ourselves. He continues, my dear brothers and sisters in the Catholic faith, I have been saying this all along and I'm going to say it just one more time. All things are either founded on this self-centered and self-serving love or are born from it. Self-love begets arrogance. Arrogance is the love of the adoring view we have of ourselves. Love of the adoring view we have of ourselves. And it begets lust and gluttony, which is an excessive devotion to carnal joy. And it begets avarice, the disorderly yearning for external things, mainly money. And since what we love above all else is our own standing, reputation, and the recognition afforded us by others, we are now going to hate everything else that stands in their way. And so now we have rage and anger, which are born out of love of vengeance on those who would frustrate our ambitions, passions, and delights. And we have envy, which is hate of someone else's fortune and love of his misfortune, when it affects us in any way. But it does not stop there. This monster is not content with affecting the mind only. It is eager to spread its tentacles to the body too, and now we have laziness, lack of discipline, idleness, which the body especially loves. All of these will prevent us from starting or continuing good and virtuous works. Saint Bernard was right. If only we could pluck out these poisonous weeds in our hearts, there would be no need for hell, for injustice. So that is from my mystic, Juan de los Angeles, whom I translated. So, in other words, the thing is, who do we worship in our culture? Who is my God, your God, right now? If it's not God, it's going to be something else, your bank account, whatever it might be, your house, your husband, your wife, even your children. Especially now that children are actually sometimes displayed as in a shop window, so that everyone can see ourselves, our reincarnation, our achievement, our success, and we display the children there for all to see. They're used as elements of for people to see their parents' success, when in fact it could be much more simple, just filial parental love. So, what I have tried to say is that at the moment our culture is fragmented because we are behaving, perhaps we have no choice, like nomads, rather than pilgrims. A pilgrim is someone on a journey. The nomad is all over the place, here and there, stopping here, stopping there, he doesn't know where. A pilgrim's journey is not easy. I think of all the journeys in literature, the hero. The hero always embarks on a journey. Ulysses, as if it's a metaphor for life. And in this journeying, which is very Augustinian, really, the pilgrim man, he calls them viator, the pilgrim man, is a man, nevertheless, who has a destination. He is passing through your village or your town or hamlet. He will sleep at an inn and rest, but then the next day keeps on going to his destination. Does not get attached to that inn. He needs a place to rest and he takes a rest there. And if you want, you can use this symbolic translation for the man who is rooted. The rooted pilgrim asks, where can I rest? It's just a rest. Where do I find some rest in my life? And draw courage to live in this degraded world at such a fast pace. Where we can find rest is a big question. I don't know the answer. It's everyone's answer, I suppose. It's a huge question. I'll stop by mentioning Solzhenitsyn. Solzhenitsyn, who said he lived both dystopian lives, the one in the Soviet Union, where he was in prison for such a long time. Yeah, and what kept him sane was the fact that he was doing manual work. Okay, so one brick and then the other and then the other, and there he was doing all that all day. He kept thinking. If he were sat in a room, he would probably go insane. Yeah, it was manual work who saved him. And that was the Soviet Union, there in Siberia. But then he went, after he was let go, he went to the United States. And then he talks about this clearly, very soon realized that this was another dystopian society, different kind. He explains that in his writings. The difference was this, the thing that I began with, the lack of courage of modern man. He disintegrates, not ready for difficulties. But he says something, what can we do? Well, not all of us can be heroes or act or behave heroically or be martyrs. We don't have it in us, but we can take little tiny little steps. And one major step that Solzhenitsyn says, in order to stop the disease, in order to stop the illness, the dystopia, is very simple. Don't accept lies. Well, this is what they told us when we were kids, so that you shouldn't lie. Okay. And we sort of disregard it, not think about it philosophically. Do not accept them. Do not tell them, but if someone tells you, do not accept and say, no. We can do that. No, I do not accept that. That is a lie. Coming from whoever. It's a very small step, but he says that if you take the courage to contradict that person or to say, no, I will not stand for this, I will not believe it, you are safeguarding yourself, not only that, but after that, that is the most difficult one, the first time that we stand up and say no. And then it gets easier, he says. it gets easier to stand up and start retracing our steps, perhaps a little bit, to hopefully find normality, some kind of normality again. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Sorry for the... I hope it wasn't speech. I just... that was what I was thinking about today. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.